the jurisprudence that was emanating from such cases. One of that case, my lady, my lord, is Constitutional Petition number 689 of 2008, where the three-judge bench constituted of Justice Koril, Justice Mombi, and Justice Odunga dealt effectively with the question of the applicability of the basic structure in this republic.
The name of the case, please.
My lady, we have filed our index. It is Attorney General, who was the appellant, it was Samuel Mutua Kavuitu and others, was the Attorney General. My lady, my lords, Justice Odunga, seated in that bench, dealt effectively with the question of the applicability of the basic structure. And at paragraph 158, my ladies, my lord, they made an observation that the question of the basic structure only affects Parliament, and that Parliament cannot alter the basic structure without involving the people. My ladies, my lord, the reasoning behind this case, my lady, was of course the Casavananda. And it is important to recapture the history behind Casavananda. That at that particular time, my ladies, my lords, when the Supreme Court of India sought to deal with the matter before it, the Constitution of India was suffering the 24th and the 25th amendments. And that is why, my ladies, my lord, the judicial officers crafted a means of protecting the Constitution from arbitrary mutilation without involving the people. And therefore the question, and the fundamental question to be answered, my ladies, my lords, does the Republic of Kenya find itself in that circumstances? Our answer is in negative. The Republic of Kenya and the people of Kenya, when they gave unto themselves the Constitution, having experienced similar experiences in the repealed Constitution, enacted Article 255. And when they enacted Article 255, my ladies, my lord, they also reserved some powers for themselves. The powers emanate from Article 1, when they said that the people can exercise their powers directly or indirectly. And in the question of the amendment of the Constitution, they reserved themselves under Article 257. Article 257 is clearly for the individuals and the Kenyans who have no access to Parliament. My ladies, my lord, that observation was done by the judges of the Superior Court. If you look at paragraph 490 of the impugned judgment, all the way to paragraph 496, the judges are making a very correct observation that them that do not have the ability to move amendments through Parliament, they have their leeway in Article 257. But what do they go and declare, my ladies, my lord? They go and make an observation that even we, the people, exercising our sovereignty, cannot do so without the constituent primary power. The question is, where is that constituent primary power in the Constitution? Is it provided for by Article 257? Can judicial innovation fetter the supremacy of the people and the supremacy of the Constitution? My lady, we answer, my ladies, my lords, we answer in negative. That it is the people who gave unto themselves the Constitution who can fetter that power. My ladies, my lords, moving on to the other aspects, the question of the constitutionality...
Counsel.
Yes, my lord.
Let me just understand you, please.
Yes.
Do you take it that already in Kivuitu versus AG, courts in this country have already pronounced themselves on the basic structure doctrine. Is that your position?
No, that's not my position.
Just
My
a moment.
position is that that is a fluid position.
Just a moment. I understood you to say that they understood the basic structures doctrine to apply as a fetter to Parliament's unrestrained amendments to the Constitution.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So they recognize it, but they say it is limited to Parliament. Is that your submission?
Reservingly, yes.
Thank you. Carry on.
So, my lady, my lords, just to buttress on that point, I'll refer you to the case that we just referred. At paragraph 161, Justice Odunga, seated among others, says, "We wonder whether, in light of the provisions of 2010 Constitution, the proposition that Parliament cannot amend the Constitution in a manner that they may result in the distortion of the basic structure still has a place in our jurisprudence." That is the observation of Justice Odunga, who was seated in this bench. The fundamental question to be answered, my ladies, my lords, the basic structure of the Constitution vis-a-vis the proposed amendments. For example, there was a proposal to increase the numbers of the constituencies. How would have increment of the numbers of the constituencies fettered or altered or distorted the basic structure? The basic structure of the Constitution, my ladies, my lords, one of them is about representation. How does the increment of the constituency, so as to achieve equality and equity in representation, alter the basic structure? That we submit, my ladies, my lords, it is a judicial innovation that does not find any rest in our Constitution. My ladies, my lord, allow me to move on to my next point. And as I do so, my ladies, my lord, allow me to deal briefly with the question of public participation and its sitting in the circumstances of a popular initiative amendments. My ladies, my lords, the concept of public participation is intended to enhance participatory democracy. And as it enhances participatory democracy, it recognizes that it can interface with either Parliament or the county assemblies. My ladies, my lords, Article 118 of the Constitution that creates public participation as an obligation for Parliament, and Article 196 Clause 2B, which creates an obligation for public participation for the county assemblies, ought to be interpreted in a manner that allows it to achieve the purpose. The purpose of that the provisions, my ladies, my lords, is to make sure either Parliament or the county assemblies do not arbitrarily abuse their powers when they are doing their normal legislations. But a fundamental question ought to be raised, whether or not a bill of this nature, a popular initiative seeking to amend a constitution, is a normal bill or normal legislative works of Parliament or the county assemblies. Why should that then be the questions, my ladies, my lords? It should be the question so as to analyze whether the inputs of the public participation being collated and collected either by the county assemblies or the Parliament will inform the bill. How did the judges of the Superior Court observe? They observed that neither Parliament nor the county assemblies can alter the content and the context of the bill as submitted. So, my ladies, my lords, you realize that public participation in these processes should not have been elevated the way it was elevated by the Justice of the Superior Court, simply because we are dealing with a sui generis situation. Sui generis, my ladies, my lords, in the sense that public participation collected and the views collected cannot alter the content. Why so, my ladies, my lords? because the bill, whether domiciled in the parliament or domiciled in the county assemblies, is not owned by either of those organs. The bill is owned by the promoter. So can views collected ordinarily alter the content of a bill proposed? For example, I give an example. Could the county assembly of Kirinyaga say that we are now going to create an executive prime minister? Would that find a sitting in a bill of this nature? Yes, my lord, we submit no. How, my lord? The justice of the Superior Court ought to have applied the doctrine of sui generis while interpreting Article 118 and Article 196, which allows or which brings the concept of public participation. My ladies, my lords, allow me to move to the contradictions appearing in the judgment. To do so, my ladies, my lords, permit me to request you to go with me to paragraph 490 all the way to paragraph 496. And the fundamental question we'll be asking following my submissions is whether a judgment that contradicts itself in this manner is capable of being implemented. My ladies, my lords, at paragraph 490 of the judgment, the judge says that, and I read, it follows that the president has no power under the Constitution as president to initiate changes to the Constitution under Article 256 of the Constitution, since Parliament is the only organ granted authority by under the Constitution. My ladies, my lords, the justice of the Superior Court observed that we need to have a holistic approach to the interpretation of this Constitution. Therefore, on interpreting whether the president has the capacity to initiate amendments, we also ought to have borrowed leave in Article 119 of the Constitution. Permit me, my ladies, my lords, to make just some little reference to the same. My ladies, my lords, Article 119 says, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including to enact, amend, or repeal any legislation. My ladies, my lords, they ought to have put into consideration these provisions and as well put into consideration the provisions of Article 27. 27 provides that we all are equal before the law and we enjoy equal protection. What made the justice of the Superior Court to declothe the president of that right of equality before the law? Could it have been the intimidation of the status of the president? My ladies, my lords, we submit thus that insofar as this provision or this paragraph so appears, the justice of the Superior Court failed to apply the purposive rule in the interpretation.
Just a question, Mr. Ndegwa.
Yes, my ladies.
Does any legislation include the Constitution?
Well, lady, that might be jurisprudential and debatable, but yet we submit that it's a right that is available to a citizen. And since Article 12 creates those rights of a citizen. My lady, my lords, what did the justice of the Superior Court say? The same paragraph. The president, if he so wishes, can, however, through the office of the Attorney General, use parliamentary initiative to propose amendments to the Constitution. What an observation. Then they further say, under paragraph 496, permit me to read for purposes of clarity. In our view, in interpreting the Constitution, Constitution holistically, as we are enjoined to do so by Article 1 Clause 2, must be read together with Article 256 and 257 of the Constitution. When one considers these provisions together, the only reasonable conclusion is that Article 257 of the Constitution is reserved for situations where the promoters of the bill do not have recourse to the route contemplated under Article 256, which is a parliamentary initiative. Our view is in tandem with the historical genesis of the provisions we have set out here above. In other words, Article 257, my ladies, my lords, root is meant to be invoked by those who have no access to Article 256. Those who have access to Article 256 roots are therefore barred from purporting to invoke Article 257. They have said, my ladies, my lord, the president has no access to that route. Then the further says that Article 257 is only available for the person who has no ability to access parliament. The further says that under Article 94, my lady, my lord, that parliament is the only legislative organ. Are we making our president a toothless dog? Does the president continue to enjoy the rights enshrined in the Constitution, or is he declothed of those rights pursuant to taking of oath? My ladies, my lords, if you go again to paragraph 492, again allow me to read it. Beyond the text of the Constitution, there is another reason it is impermissible under our Constitution, in our view, to permit the president to initiate such amendments through popular initiative and then sprint to the finishing lane to await and receive it. Where in the facts before the court was it that the president was promoting a popular initiative process? They further say, my ladies, my lords, this is because Article 257 of the Constitution provides that if a bill to amend this Constitution proposes an amendment relating to a matter specified in Article 255, the President shall, before assenting the bill, request the IBC to conduct within 90 days a national referendum to approve the bill. What an erroneous findings, my ladies, my lords. Article 257, clause 5, does not deal with the president. If you may read, my ladies, my lords, the specified article, my ladies, my lords, it provides that if Independent Electoral Commission is certified that the initiative meets the requirements of this article, the Commission shall submit the draft bill to each county assembly for consideration within 3 months. Could they have made erroneous finding because of the fixation they had with the whole notion of the president? Or was it just an apparent error on the face of record?
Counsel.
Yes, my lord.
What does Sub-Article 9 say?
Of the same?
Yes.
If Parliament passes the bill, it shall be submitted to the President for assent. That's correct, my lord. But yes, that is not what is captured in the judgment. The judgment speaks about the President taking the bill to the IBC. We can only take what is recorded because it's a court of record, my lords.
So, he takes it to Parliament,
yes, my lord,
and not to IBC.
Yes, my lord.
What is the big difference as far as your argument is concerned?
Yes,
what is the big thing there? I mean, you're saying the president has no role at all, but the Constitution says he receives it and takes it to Parliament.
They are saying, my lords.
Just a moment.
Yes.
They say he receives it and takes it to the IBC.
Yes, my lord. They are saying if an amendment details or touches on Article 255(1), the president, and of course that is emanating from, the amendment is emanating from 256. That is when the president is seized of this function. But insofar as we are dealing with an amendment under Article 257 as it is in these circumstances, it was erroneous for them to find that the president has a role to play. That's our submissions, my lord. My lords, as I sum up, the justice, if you look at paragraph 490 and you look at the finding Roman 3, the justice of the Superior Court declared that a declaration is hereby made that the President does not have authority under the Constitution to initiate changes to the Constitution, and that a constitutional amendment can only be initiated by Parliament through a parliamentary initiative under Article 256 or through a popular initiative under Article 257. A correct finding. But again, my ladies, my lords, the question is, what was the role of the President in the entire process? The role of the President in the entire process was detailed in Article 131 of the Constitution. What does it provide? That the President has the role of initiating national unity. Where do we get this national unity from, my ladies, my lords? We get it from Article 10. Article 10 provides the principles and values of national of governance. And the President, under Article 132, is mandated to make periodic reports to Parliament on how he has achieved the implementation of Article 10. But does Article 131 tell us the means, the modes, the manner, how the President is supposed to initiate the process of national unity? It doesn't. The law doesn't constrain and restrict the President. He is left to his discretion even to create a task force as such of the Building Bridges Initiative. Was it then possible that the court could then declare the Building Bridges Initiative unconstitutional? We must look at the objects and the purpose for which the Building Bridges was created. Among the fundamental purpose, my ladies, my lords.
Mr. Ndegwa, can you wind up?
Yes, my lord, I'm just waiting up. My ladies, my lords, the purpose for the creation of that organ was to enhance national unity. Can we fault the President for doing what is constitutionally his or what is constitutionally bestowed upon him? We submit no. My ladies, my lords, there ought to be equality of arms. When the matter of justice, Lady Justice, Deputy President of the Supreme Court, was brought before the court, she was treated with equality of arms. Why should we declare the President of his glory conferred upon him by the Constitution and clothe one organ with the other? We need equality of arms. Well, ladies, my lords, unless there is any clarification, I beg to rest my case and greatly thank the court for its time.
Thank you, Mr. Ndegwa.
My Lord, I have a preliminary request to make. My Lord, there are substantive